topic that I was asked to talk about was business ethics, yet a moral question for business leaders. I'll start off with a quote by Chris Hedges, American award-winning author. He says, "We now live in a nation," and definitely you can extrapolate this as a world, "where doctors destroy health, lawyers destroy justice, universities destroy knowledge, governments destroy freedom, the press destroys information, religion destroys morals, and our banks destroy the economy." When people lose faith in each other, it's a problem. When they lose faith in their leaders, it's a crisis. And when people lose faith in their institutions, that's a disaster. Enron, Tycoon, WorldCom, Parmalat, global financial crisis, Lehman Brothers, Bernard Madoff, these corporations, corporate scandals, and current financial woes have brought renewed interest to business ethics, namely, understanding the factors that promote ethical behaviors in organizations. Although conventional wisdom suggests that unethical behavior is a result of a few bad apples, there's a mounting evidence that in addition to the personal values of employees, the organizational environment plays a crucial role in encouraging ethical conduct. More recently, we have been living in a true dilemma at our social level, at levels of our social, political, and religious values. Not so as if it's the first time that such a thing occurs, but rather it feels confusing that after so many thousands of years of lessons of morality and values, we allow ourselves into acts that are empty of both. People have shown significant signs that we have lost faith across many of the above relational definitions, many of which are considered as cornerstones of human civilizations, and rather absolute givens for understanding humanity. In my intervention this afternoon, I will address the interrelationship between leaders and ethics. I will then try to understand what ethics is, and then turn into the leadership complex environment and end up with the way we get to manage them all. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to make an intervention, and actually I thought a lot about the title. It was in 2010. It was, "How did business schools contribute to the global financial crisis?" Then I changed it because it's very offensive, so I called it, "Did business schools contribute to the global financial crisis?" And definitely I had an answer. So as usual, I carry both as a previous academician, so I'm very concerned. I'm a product of those business schools back in the 80s, and then I'm a lecturer and have been a lecturer on issues on strategy and leadership. So it was an interesting way of intervention, and intervention or introspection into what we have been doing over the past many years, past couple of decades at least, to say the least. And definitely there are lots of, this is not the, if there's a way to, in the Q&A session, we'll be talking more about it. But when we talk about, the reason I brought it up is that when we talk about ethics, business ethics, I don't believe there's a business ethics. There are ethics in general. I'm sure I haven't had the opportunity to start off with you in the morning. I was on travel and just came in. So I'm sure there has been some interventions about what ethics is or what business ethics. I don't believe there's a business ethics. There are ethics. And you cannot be ethical at work and not ethical in your relationship with your wife. You cannot be ethical with your friends and not be ethical in your relationship on your own leadership self. So these are the types of things. But for the interest of the audience, I will try to break it down in such a way that can be useful. When we hear the word ethical, several ideas come to mind. Most notably, good versus bad, and right versus wrong. 6 concepts from the foundation of trust upon which ethical business practice is built. One is ethics, and in the paper that you may have, I'm detailing all this. So what ethics is, and the difference between ethics, values, morals, integrity, character, and laws. And definitely you know the nuance between all of those. These 6 concepts, ethics, values, morals, integrity, character, and laws, form the foundation of ethical business practices. 2, the leadership formula. On the other hand, the leadership equation is rather complex. Among the major variables comes four. One is individual traits, five. One is individual traits, the leader's intellectual, psychological, emotional, and physical makeup. Two, organizational context, the organizational culture, history, structure, etc. Three, marketplace dynamics, competition, growth, opportunities, etc. Four, staff characteristics. Are those being led, collaborative or antagonistic, competent or novice? And five, performance matrices. Can the leader's impact be quantified? We're talking about the context of ethics. So those variables are independent and difficult to isolate, but complexity doesn't justify surrender. So what do we need to do as business leaders in an organizational context? Before starting off with merging these leadership and ethics, I'd like to share a dream I have of having our organizations as life examples of business ethics. So within the context of business, our colleagues all of us spend more than 2/3 of our lives at work. It's almost guaranteed that if we project ethical business practices into the workplace, this will resonate in our homes and resonate with our families and with our friends. A very promising way for changing the world, n'est-ce pas? If the organizational environment is important in promoting ethical conduct, how can such a context be created? There are three key pieces of ethical environment that work together to promote ethical behavior. One is the leadership, two are the practices, and three is the climate. So when we talk about ethical leaders, they set the tone of how employees should behave in organizations. They're both moral persons who have desirable characteristics and moral managers who influence employees' conduct directly. Two, ethical practices are actions or activities related to ethics that are repeated and recognizable in organizations. They are what organizations actually do rather than just what they speak about. Now, there are several things for ethical practices, and I will just name them because there's some elaboration on each one of those. One is the recruitment and selection, right from the beginning. So quality input is a quality output. Ethical input, ethical employees, right from the beginning, and the recruitment and the selection process is demanding enough to ensure those quality ethical input, then you'll definitely ensure quality and ethical results. Two, orientation and training. There's no substitute for just keep drilling and talking about it over and again and keeping it part of your culture. Three, policies and codes, how we enforce those policies and codes. Five, rewards and punishment system, not only for the financial gain, immediate financial gain, but for the process as well. So there are two dimensions for work. One is the output, and the second one is the process. So you looking at both is another way of reinforcing ethical behavior. The accountability and responsibility, people are responsible for their own actions, and the questioning authority if unethical behavior occurs. And last is the decision making. What kind of decision making process takes place, and what is the right thing to do? Lastly is the ethical climate, where employee in general is a general perception organizational employees have about whether the organization is ethical. It is an ethical climate where it's important to look at the following things. Employees have a lot of skills in recognizing ethical issues. Success is defined as results and processes, as we said. Employees continuously strive to maintain highly ethical standards, and they rarely feel pressured to compromise the organizational ethical standards to achieve business objectives. To end up, how can our companies enforce ethical practices? Many corporate ethical standards fail because they are too vague and general to give no specific directives. Codes of ethics must be specific enough to convey the intended conduct. However, they must avoid being so prescriptive that a literal interpretation becomes an excuse for non-compliance, where an employee becomes unable to act and make decisions fearing that their action will be unethical. Establishing an ethical standard for business conduct involves more than a written policy. The most compelling support for an ethical standard is adherence to and enforcement of that standard by those who institute it and by those for whom it is written. More than briefings and policies handed out to every single employee, our behavior, practice, and deeds as organizational leaders are the foundation for creating the ethical standard and making it stick. That is walking the talk, not talking the walk. Thank you very much.